Assalamualaikum. So inshallah, we'll be starting in just a second. But if you see in front of you, I've put these cue cards with pens, and there's a box to drop any questions you have. Inshallah, we will have a Q&A, but if you want to anonymously drop in your questions, we'll deal with them as well during the Q&A portion.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How's everyone doing? Alhamdulillah, mashallah. You know, only the really dedicated, hardcore crowd comes out on a Saturday afternoon to learn about purification and prayer. But what this shows is, I'm very appreciative to all of you, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is far more appreciative than me. Allah is ash-shakur, the appreciative. He gives thanks. What does it mean? Shakur means grateful. It means whatever you do for the sake of Allah, Allah appreciates that so much more than what you put in, and Allah gives you back. Now this workshop, Brother Faisal is the one who requested that we do a workshop on tahara and Salah. And it's interesting because these days there are a lot of people who want to do kind of like the exciting topics. You know, talk about something modern and contemporary, talk about something about the end of times and the world's coming to an end and the signs, and these are all great things. You know, the clips that you see, you know, on YouTube when you go on the clips and it says emotional, you know, and exclamation mark, crying, and then Sheikh so-and-so is crying. That's all good and well. But our deen, what it boils down to is not the exciting things all the time. It's not the flashy things. It boils down to the quiet moments that we have with us and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? It boils down to those things. As one of the great scholars of the past, he passed away and he was seen in a dream. Now, of course, we know that dreams are not a proof for anything in Islam, but the scholars, when they're seen in dreams, the scholars recorded a lot of wisdom from the dreams that they saw. And so this scholar who was seen in a dream, he was asked, what happened to you in the hereafter when you went to meet Allah? What happened to you? What did Allah do with you? He said, Allah forgave me. And he said that all of the texts that we used to, the Islamic books that we used to read, and all of the ibarat, all of the sayings that we used to say, the teaching, the really good points that we made, all the things that we used to say and do have now gone in the hereafter. And the only thing that benefited us were 2 small rakahs that we prayed before Fajr at night. He said that was what really benefited me in the end, was those 2 rakahs before Fajr in the night. Those were the things that I found most beneficial. Even though scholars in their whole life, they write so many beautiful things, give speeches and talks. So this is why we're coming back to this question. We know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He blessed this ummah with Salah. In fact, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Salah comes from the word sila, which is to have a connection between one thing and another thing. Now, if Allah had left us alone, we would not have been able to understand how to connect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So different religions, they make up different ways to pray. They don't know exactly how to pray. They don't know what they're doing. They make it up as they go along. And when you look at the houses of worship of other religions, and I'm speaking as someone who has been a different religion before I became Muslim, you know, you use it once a week, and the rest of the time the place is empty. Okay? Whereas look at the house of Allah, subhanallah, on a Saturday at this time, how many other houses of worship in different religions are full of believers coming in, coming out, meeting each other, asking each other how they're doing, learning, teaching. This is something very unique to Muslims, but this masjid is only here because of one thing, and that is Salah. And that Salah, as we know from the Prophet ﷺ, this is the key to paradise. So if our entire life is to live here, to go back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Obviously, if you know that you have to pass through a door, right? And it's locked. You naturally will not go there until you get the key. So Salah is such an important thing for us that we cannot imagine living this life in this world without having a Salah in our lives. This is why we're focusing on this. I want to make sure that we're going to talk about a lot of legal things today, meaning little intricacies. There's a couple of things, reminders that I want to say. Number one is these are all derived from Quran and Sunnah. And the ulama, when there was no Quran or Hadith there, they would use their ijtihad to try to come to a conclusion or a ruling. This naturally means, because ulama, I'm talking about the ulama of the past, from the salaf, the imams and so on, that they naturally came to some slightly different conclusions. In fact, even the companions of the Prophet ﷺ had sometimes different understandings of rulings from each other. So when you see a difference of opinion, for example, what I'm basing today, you can't present every single opinion. It's impossible to teach a class Salah according to all of the imams in a 2-hour period, for example. And it's also not possible at this level of study, which is an intensive level, it's not possible to study the differences of opinion or the proofs between the scholars. So somebody might say, well, what's the proof that you should pass your hand underneath your beard, a mustahab to do this as a man? And we can go back to the hadith of every single thing that's written here, but it will take forever. It will take a long time. So what we're doing is the crystallization of what the ulama have taught us. And if there are specific questions, we can definitely get into it. And then the second thing is, so what we're doing is we're basically basing this. I asked, Brother Faisal, what is the majority of people, how do they practice? What do they follow? What do they do? Now, I know that we do not all follow the exact same fiqh rulings on issues. We don't. Some of us believe that you should have a long fist-length beard. Others believe you can trim it. It's no problem. Some of us believe you should wear niqab. Some of us believe you should not wear niqab. These are all differences between the ulama, and they are valid differences. Not every single opinion is valid. So what we're going to do is we're basing it on what I felt was the majority of who I think I'm speaking to, right? Which is the Hanafi school. However, I'm not limiting my discussion to that. So if anybody is saying that you didn't stick to the one opinion that you were supposed to stick to, I'm asking you already to understand we're going to have some different opinions. You may not like it. You may not like, for example, if somebody wipes over their cotton socks. You may not like it, but I will mention it. You may not like it if somebody, for example, says certain other opinions. Now, the third thing I want to say before we get into this is that the workshop is meant for 13 plus. Our young guests are definitely welcome. I don't think you guys are 13, alhamdulillah. But I'm going to say things in deen. La haya'a fil ilm is a term that we use among the students, which is there is no shame in discussing knowledge of Islam. So I'm going to use words that are very explicit, that we don't usually use outside. But I want you to understand these are medical terms, okay? In another context, using those things would be not good to use, right? So we'll say private part outside. Here, I will not use words like that. I will say the exact thing that I have to say to get the meaning across. And it's not to be made in a jest or anything like that. It's a serious matter of deen. And the next thing is that I will also discuss things that may be applied to one gender and not the other. I'm going to talk about menstruation, female discharge, female flatulence. I'm going to speak about wet dreams. I'm going to speak, well, it could happen on the other side too, but it's more common on the male side. I'm going to speak about different aspects, istibra, istinja, according to male and female. Why do I have to do this? Because if someone does not say it clearly, this is when you get in culture, traditions where people don't know what to do, because they weren't taught how to clean themselves, how to behave, what happens during menstruation, right? So Bismillah, I hope you'll understand that. So Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, and then there will be a time for you to ask questions, and any time in the presentation, okay, that you have a question, I just want you can pass it up, or you just put up your hand and ask. And I'm not gonna, there's no embarrassing question. This is the time, in fact, to ask these questions. You can even say, I'm asking for a friend, okay? and then ask about your urine dripping and your whatever else you want to ask about, okay? So now's the time, there's no shame. The first thing that I want to mention, or we're gonna speak about tahara. Now, why are we talking about tahara in a workshop on Salah? Because you cannot have Salah unless you have tahara. Tahara meaning cleanliness and purity. We'll talk about the definitions. So I want to begin with some of the ayat. Today is just going to be spent on purification entirely. Next week will be spent on Salah entirely. So hold your prayer questions till next week and bring all of your purification questions now. So the first thing I want to mention is there are the ayat of the Quran that we use as the basis for understanding why we even purify ourselves. I mean, other cultures and religions, they don't always understand. Why are you taking a bottle into the bathroom? You know, when you go into a public bathroom and you just see an empty water bottle on the side, you know your Muslim brother has been there, your sister has been there. It's almost like become like a silent communication now. You know, when someone is walking outside and they see a Muslim in the bed, they say, leave the bottle right there. Okay, go ahead. You know, so we have this way of life that Allah has taught us. And it elevates us. We don't become arrogant about it, but it does mean that it elevates us, right? I remember when I was a non-Muslim, my friends, Pakistani friends growing up, they used to tell me, we were in high school, and they were saying, because I'm brown, I'm Indian, so you know they used to speak very openly with me. And he said, you know, these non-Muslims, they don't even use water in the bathroom. They just wipe and they get up and they leave. And I remember looking at him like, isn't that what everybody does? So where are we getting this basis? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, لا تقم فيه أبدا لمسجد أسس على التقوى من أول يوم أحق أن تقوم فيه رجال يحبون أن يتطهروا والله يحب المطهرين. Allah is talking about the masjid that was built by the hypocrites. It's like a fake masjid. The hypocrites built a building and told the Prophet, come pray in it, called Masjid al-Dirar. Allah told the Prophet, do not, O Prophet, ever pray in that hypocrite's mosque. Certainly, a masjid that is founded on taqwa, righteousness, from the first day is more worthy for you to pray in it. In that masjid, meaning a masjid that is dedicated to Allah, in it are men and women who love to be purified. And Allah loves those who purify themselves. So right here, we're talking all spiritual purification, of course, because prayer is the purification spiritually. But before that, we do the purification physically. Why? Because there is a symbolism Allah wants us to understand. You know how they say in English, they say godliness, what is it? Cleanliness is next to godliness. They don't mean godliness as in you become like God. It means godliness, they mean like piety, okay? So they say cleanliness is next to godliness. Why? Because in the same way that the heart needs to be clean, Allah made our physical surroundings something that if we clean that, we get into a cleaner state of mind as well. Have you tried to do work from a place that's completely messy? How do you feel coming into your kitchen when it's all piled up with dirty dishes, food is lying around everywhere? Now that's the state of many of our houses. It's okay. You know, it's a work in progress. But how do you feel when everything's clean? You feel differently. Same thing when you're clean in your body and in the place of prayer it's clean, you focus on Allah in a different way. The next ayah of Quran. So Allah is saying clearly, He loves those who purify themselves. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Ya ayyuhal muddathir, qum fa'anzir. Right? And what did He say at ayah number 4? وَثِيَابَكَ فَطَهِّرْ. Right? And purify your garment. Why did Allah tell the Prophet ﷺ, when you stand up, pray to Allah, call to Allah, and purify your garment? So there is a value in having clean garments when you pray. And the next one is the ayah of wudu. So we'll hold on to that for a second. Now I'm going to just go to it's easier to do it through a bunch of slides. What was the view here? How do I get the full view? Just give me a second. Oh, there it is. There it is. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So, what is the linguistic definition? This is by As-Subah Academy. What is the linguistic definition of tahara? It is cleanliness and purification. The legal definition, it is tahara is purification from physical impurities that we call najasa, and the ritual impurities that we call hadath, which prevent the performance of specific acts of worship. So we are trying to purify so that we can perform these acts of worship. So the two types of impurities are what? Physical and ritual, or meaning spiritual. So wudu, if I break wudu, is that a physical impurity? No, it's a spiritual impurity. You cannot tell. You can't like take my temperature or something to a blood test and see if I have wudu or not. Only Allah knows, and I try to determine that, right? So that's a ritual impurity that we call hadath. And hadath means something happened to you, like something happened, you broke your wudu. And janaba, after sexual intercourse, after ejaculation or wet dream, is also called hadath. And physical impurities is something that you can see on your body, okay? Or something that you know is there, even if you can't see it, but it's a physical thing. So if I see blood dried up, that's a physical impurity. But if I see, what about urine that's on my clothing and it dries up? I can't see it, but it's still physically there. That's why that's called najasa, okay? And so those two, we have to keep a difference between the two. Because people think, for example, if I have wudu and I'm walking around in the masjid and some kid comes up to me and vomits all over me, okay, nasty. But do I still have wudu? Or did I break wudu? How many people think you still have wudu? How many people think you've broken wudu? Okay, you still have wudu. Why? Because that's a physical impurity coming from outside. It doesn't affect your wudu, right? And so this is important to realize, right? That does not affect your wudu. Yes, that affects your body, so you may not be able to pray with all that vomit on you, but that's a different question than do you have wudu or not. So this is why we're taking this time to separate between the two understandings. The study of tahara, we're going to divide it into three parts. We're going to talk about the acts of tahara. So I'm not going to speak about, I was using, before I came across these slides, may Allah bless them, I was going to use a 300-year-old text that was translated and talking about the different types of water and the types of wells, and if a mouse falls into a well. I don't know if you guys remember, if anybody's lived abroad, back in Pakistan. I lived in Jordan for 12 years. What happens when you have like a tanki or like a khazana of ma, and like a bird falls and dies into it, and you turn on the tap one day and the water just smells funny? That actually is a ruling in fiqh. It's a practical question, but we're not going to talk about those things. We're going to talk about what is relevant to us. And these days, nobody goes to the well to fetch water. Nobody goes to the river to fetch water, right? You might, at the most, when you go fishing or something, make a little wudu in a stream. But most of us just turn the tap on. So we're going to take that as for granted. So the first thing is wudu, then ghusl, then tayammum, okay? And we mentioned hadath, or ritual impurity, is divided into two different types. Number one is the minor ritual impurity, which is called al-hadath al-asghar, meaning it's a smaller state of impurity. That means a state in which you have to perform wudu, okay, to do certain acts. And then there's the major ritual impurity, in which ghusl becomes obligatory, okay? So there's a difference between when wudu and when ghusl is obligatory. And I think you guys know a lot of this, but I'm just going over it as well. And we also know there's another fact. Then there's the idea of najasa, where it is you're supposed to remove it from your clothing and your body and your place of prayer. So those three places, your body, your clothing, and the place of prayer. Now the question is, and I'm going to correct some things of these slides when I see them. Do you have to remove every single bit of purity? So let's say you're in the office and you're wearing khakis, okay, khakis, like that color, all right? And you went to urinate and one little like pin drop of urine splashed on your khakis. Do you have to now go in the office and start to put water and try to, fall into the sink somehow, and people are coming and watching, and you're not going to be able to dry your khakis in time, so you're standing in front of the air dryer because there's no towels. Is that what you have to do? Right? I'm asking rhetorically. This is why we have to understand how much can we tolerate any level of physical impurity on our bodies. This is a very important question. A lot of people don't pray at work. They don't pray at school. Why? They say, I'm napak. Or to translate for anyone who doesn't know, I am impure, right? This is actually a big misconception. And this is a big reason that people missing prayers and prayers and prayers and prayers, and they don't need to. So, to begin, before we even get into wudu and tahara, we'll talk about this idea of impurity. When we talk about the idea of impurity, first of all, what are we speaking about? And I'm going to, forgive me, I'm toggling between two different texts here. So what is impurity here? It is, for example, what's an example of impurity that's obvious? Go ahead. There's actually just a list. It's not that many things. Guys? Yes. Urine. Okay, what else? Yes. No, that's not a physical impurity. Yeah, you see, that's a good question. Do you have to do istinja or wash your bottom after you pass gas? No, you don't have to. You don't have to. That's just air. Yes. Come on, guys. Number 2, yeah, stool, feces, right? Number 2. So yes, you have to. What else? Yes. Blood, spilled blood. Okay. So it's when blood actually comes out and spills out, that is najasa. Yes, it is impure. What else? Come on, what else? Yeah. What's that? Okay, vomit, yes. Any little bit of vomit? The scholars say, if it is a mouthful of vomit, at that point it becomes impure. But you burp a little bit, something comes up a little bit and you swallow it. What's that? You vomit so much. How do you know it's a mouthful? Do you measure it with a measuring cup and say, oh, this is a mouthful? No. What it means is you couldn't hold it into your mouth. It came so much, it came out of your mouth, right? So that's when it becomes impure. And when is that important? When you have a baby and you're feeding the baby, and any mother will know, or father who's involved, they always spit up. And so it's not the spit, it's not just a light burp. We're talking about things that come straight from the stomach all the way up, right? Yeah. What's that? Yeah, menstrual blood. Thank you very much. MashaAllah, a boy said it. That's good. That's very, very important. You know why? Because our sons need to know these ideas. Why? Because it's all actually in Islam, the responsibility is on the father to teach the daughters. But many of us have not done that in our time, right? So thank you. Menstrual blood, yes. What else? Yeah. Yeah, blood that comes out, but not. We'll talk about it. There's some details in blood, right? So if the blood does not come out of the wound, so let's say a pimple pops and it just stays right there, the blood, it doesn't come out, then it's not breaking wudu and it's not impure either. Yes. No, as long as it stays within the site of the wound, it's fine. It's when it comes out onto the rest of the body, that's when you consider that it's impurity, and that's also when you consider your wudu is broken. So that's a side point, right? A needle? Yeah, so no, it goes back to the same concept that if you lift it up and then the blood has come out, that's different. If you take a needle out and there's nothing coming out around the rest of the body, then it doesn't, yeah. What's that? Getting wet is impurity? Okay, guys, what about semen, pre-sexual fluid, women's sexual fluid? That is also pus as well. If you have a wound that is festering, and that is also considered. But again, it's when it comes out of the wound, right? Is there anything else? We're forgetting one thing: khamr, or basically alcohol. So intoxicating alcohol. From this, we are not talking about synthetic alcohol. We are not talking about the flavoring that you have in all of your candies, all of your drinks, all of your foods. So many flavorings are using a synthetic alcohol. That's not what we mean. When we mean alcohol, we mean an intoxicating drink like wine is the basis. And then on top of that, the ulama rule like beer, whiskey, vodka, these types of things, right? But the wine is the main ruling, and then they added other intoxicating drinks. Is there anything else anyone can think of? I think that's pretty much it, yeah. No. Yes? Yeah, so when I mean feces and urine, I mean all creatures. Now, there is one creature, the ulama say, that their feces is pure. What is that? Nope. Cat has impure feces. One animal, yeah. Camel? No. Yeah. No, dog is definitely impure feces. But, yes? Nope. It's all impure. I'll give you a clue. You can't avoid it. A bird. A bird that flies, flying overhead, and a pigeon plops on you. There's differences of opinion, but the opinion that I'm going to give today is that is pure. Why? Because when you're around the Kaaba and you see birds flying around the Kaaba, right? They also drop in different places of the Haram, and you still, it's wiped away or whatever, but it's considered. It's not like the entire Haram floor is now impure and najis. It's important. It's an important point. The other thing is, here's the question: is regular female discharge, clear or white, is that impure? I like how the boys are guessing. Does it break wudu? It's something that continuously comes out. Like how I'm wiping my nose right now, right? It's a clear fluid. It's same thing, our sisters, it's coming out all the time, right? There are different opinions on this. The opinion that I'm sharing today, which I think is the correct opinion, is that it is equivalent to mucus running out of your nose, okay, or tear from the eye, or sweat from the body. Meaning that the normal discharge that occurs for women is not impure, nor does it break your wudu. So women do not have to go and do istinja before every prayer. They don't have to change a liner before every prayer and do these types of things, right? And if it's beyond that, like a sexual fluid, that's a different story. And if you're not sure, then you assume purity. And I want you to understand another thing. I don't know if you guys know, because I don't know if you guys know this, but I'm actually an OCD counselor, as well as teacher and imam. I do OCD counseling, obsessive compulsive disorder. Obsessive compulsive disorder is, does anybody here, do we all get waswasa sometimes? Anyone ever get waswasa? Some doubts? Nobody. Wow, you guys are great. MashaAllah. Okay. So part of my career is to help people who are so scared of najasa, this idea of impurity, that for them it's like a morbid fear. It's like a phobia. I want you to understand something. Najasa is not scary. We remove it out of love for Allah. But it in itself is not scary. The Prophet ﷺ was handed a baby. The baby urinated all over him, right? On his Mubarak chest. And he did not start to get anxious. He did not start to get scared. He just handed the baby over, and so easy. He said, "Bring some water. Let's sprinkle some water on my chest." And they just brought some water, and he just in other interpretation he washed. But he didn't run to the shower. Oh my God, I got to take off all my clothes, run to the shower now and wash. No. Our beloved Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam saw someone urinating in the masjid. I want you to imagine if somebody comes into this masjid, let's say non-Muslim, comes into the masjid and just urinates all over the carpet. The Prophet ﷺ, when he saw that, the Sahaba wanted to beat that man up. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Leave him, let him finish." Completely empty his bladder. And then he went to the man and said, "Listen, this masjid is a place for Quran, Salah, and dhikr. This is not a place for these dirty things." And then he told the other people, "Just bring a bucket of water and pour it over, finish." So there are ways to purify, but there's no reason to be scared. Dogs used to pass in and out of the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ in that time, because there was no door. Can you imagine a dog coming into the masjid now? You'd probably call a cleaning company, sorry, Salah is, postponed because a dog walked through here. So the Sahaba were actually much more flexible with this idea of impurity. They weren't scared of it. Now we're living in a time of extreme, sterilization. And so the incidence of OCD has shot up like crazy, okay? That's the first thing. What was the second thing I wanted to say? The second thing is, so anybody here who has OCD, come talk to me. Remember that the rulings that I'm giving are general rulings, but in the end, it's not like, I want you to understand that we're all here trying. Nothing bad is going to happen to you if you miss something. Nothing bad is going to happen to you if something gets somewhere and you were not aware, right? Let's keep going. So is any impurity allowed on the body or not? Is any impurity allowed on the body or not? This is the question. The ulama differed on this question. Some of the scholars said, no, you absolutely cannot have anything on your body when it's time to pray. Okay? When it's not time to pray, then you don't have to clean yourself. It's good to do it, but you don't have to. The main thing is when it's time to pray. But can you tolerate any bit of impurity on you? According to the one opinion, that yes, you can. Why? Because the Sahaba, when did they start using water to wash themselves? Do you know? When did they start using water? First of all, is using water in istinja, is it fard? Is it sunnah? Is it optional? What is it? Yeah? It is a sunnah. It's an emphasized sunnah. What does that mean? That means? Yeah, okay, so if you didn't use water, you would not be sinful in a normal circumstance, right? We're not talking about someone has diarrhea, it's just a big explosion all over the place. Sorry, no, I shouldn't use that term in the masjid. Not explosion. A big accident all over the place. And, they mess themselves up completely. Yeah, then water is different. That's different. You need water, right? For example, as well, our sisters, I have daughters, so if anybody has daughters, they'll know when you put them on the toilet, it doesn't go like a boy all the way down. It goes here, there, then the back, then the front. So that's a different question if it spreads all over the place. But generally speaking, the Sahaba, they started using water after the Prophet ﷺ came to Medina, and he saw some Sahaba taking water with them to the bathroom. He said, what are you doing? He said, this is what we learned from our Jewish neighbors that they were doing. And the Prophet ﷺ, he approved that. And he said that this is something that is a good thing. So it wasn't necessarily a teaching that was fard from the beginning. It's a sunnah the Prophet ﷺ saw, and he approved it. That doesn't mean that they weren't using water at all from before. I'm not saying it started necessarily with them, but that's a hadith that we have. So what does that mean? Sometimes in our cultural understanding, we think it is fard to use water. In fact, if you don't use water, I've seen people who damage themselves. They hurt themselves. My mother, who's not a Muslim, she's a Hindu, make dua for her. She came to me and she said, all the Muslim girls at my work, they all have urinary tract infections. I know you people don't like to use the bathroom outside of the house because you can't use water. And I said, SubhanAllah, my mom is observing something because she works in a drugstore. So she is observing something that all the Muslim girls have UTI, urinary tract infection. She said because you don't want to go to the bathroom for 8 hours because, oh no, I'm going to be napak. This is actually a big misconception. Before I became Muslim, I remember hanging around with a bunch of Pakistani guys. SubhanAllah, when I told this story last time, the guy who I'm talking about now, his child was in my class. SubhanAllah. So it tells you I'm a little older. But I saw a guy, Muslim guy, wearing topi, came and he was like holding his stomach, and he's telling the brothers, please take me to the masjid, take me to the masjid, I gotta go to the masjid, go to the masjid. What's wrong? Oh, let's take this guy to the mosque. Why is he sick? So we all went in the car, we were in grade 12, and we drove him to the masjid. And he came back, he said, oh, okay, so what happened? He said, I had to use the bathroom. So why don't you just use the bathroom in school? Why did we leave school for you to come to the masjid to use the bathroom? Water. I said, okay, this is exactly when a cultural thing, when a sunnah becomes like fard, it actually is not a good thing to do that. So the Sahaba sometimes, what would they use? Tissue paper? What is it? Stones. How much, if you're using a rock, like an object, like a rock, How much impurity do you think you can remove with a rock? I mean, if you just use paper alone, can you remove everything? Right? Anybody who has a baby and they are wiping them, cleaning their diaper, if you wash them, everything, no smell. When you use wet wipes, a little less. If you just use a dry wipe, is that child really clean? They're not that clean. But you've just taken away the majority of the impurity. So the Sahaba, sometimes they would use stones, and the ulama had difference of opinion. Can you leave some impurity on your body? Some ulama said, no, you can't leave anything, because Allah loves those who purify themselves. Other scholars said, wait, how is this possible? If the Sahaba were using stones, and stones do not remove all of the impurity from your body, what it means is there was a little bit of impurity left on the bodies of our Sahaba too, men and women. And we don't have stories that the Sahaba were constantly running back to the bathroom, back and forth, washing themselves if a drop came out. We don't have stories that the Sahabiyat, they didn't have pads, they didn't have liners, they didn't wear undergarments. We don't have stories that they're running back and forth to wash themselves. So the level of cleanliness that we have today has gone way, way, it's good to do if you're balanced, but it's not good if it causes difficulties, like health problems or like psychological problems. So the ulama say that one opinion says that the amount of a dirham, it was an ancient Islamic coin that was about, let's see, a 50 pence coin. That's in England. So it's about the inner palm, they say, this much. So if you have that much impurity on you, right, whether it's little drips of urine that came out because afterwards it came out by accident, or you coughed or something like that, or you're in the mall and you were not able to use water because no Muslim used the bathroom before you and left a bottle for you, then what do? You use paper, and that's it. Yes, if it spreads beyond that or goes outside of the private areas, then you use water, right? Okay. However, it is best to use water. That's something important to understand. Any questions about this? Yes. If you guys want to write it down, you can write it down too, and we can have one of the younger people bring it up. I don't even know how to, or you can put it in a box. Yeah, sister, do you have a question? Sister. Yeah, so this is a good question. If you make wudu and something comes out after that, if you're not sure if it came out, you ignore it. You ignore it. But if you're 100% sure it came out, like for sure, clear, you can swear by Allah, I swear something came out, then you have to make your wudu again. Okay? And you know what they say, and I'm not going in order, so I'm going all over the place because questions are coming too. This is why the prophetic practice was after you urinate, they didn't use tissue paper and put it there to check if something came out. They didn't constantly check, constantly go back and forth. No. They used to, you take a little bit of water, just a little bit of water, and lightly sprinkle, very lightly sprinkle the top of the izar, meaning the top of the underwear, in the crotch area, and then go. Now, if a drop comes out after that, they did that so that you could just say, oh, it's probably just the water. What does that tell you? What does that tell you? It's a strange thing if you really think about what's being implied. Because we're talking about the laws and what comes out and what doesn't come out. What does it tell you? Do away with the doubts. So there's no place for doubts and waswasa in Islam. Zero. If you have a doubt or waswasa, that's shaitan completely, and you have to solve that. And the best way to solve that is by doing what you're scared of, which is to carry on. Okay? What's the second thing that tells you? Because think about it. If a drop comes out, if you feel something coming out, yeah, what is it? It's the obvious. So, what it's saying is not only is a little bit of impurity excused, but if you have a dripping waswasa, that's, I don't know if it's a drop or I don't know if it's discharge. A lot of times for females, it's hard to tell, right? And for men, sometimes too, you're sweating, you don't know. Sometimes you're just wet from istinja, and you're feeling the wetness again, and you think it's urine again, right? Because you didn't dry. In the end, if the prophetic practice was like that, then that means that whether it's a drop or whether it's water, there is a kind of a permission to look the other way. In fact, it's a recommendation to not get too exact on these matters. The hadith that we bring and everybody knows, maybe many people, especially with waswasa, know this hadith very, very well, about a punishment in the grave. The Prophet ﷺ passed by, and the people are being punished in the grave because they did not free themselves from urine, right? Some of the commentaries, they mention, that the ulama mentioned, that this is not talking about like, mashallah, a very religious youth trying his best, her best, and still they're feeling something, they think they're going to get punished in the grave. This is talking about people who would just urinate all over themselves. They don't care. They don't care if they have tahara for salah. You know, can you imagine just someone coming for prayer, they don't even have wudu? So it starts with these things. That's why. So the hadith, when people start getting religious, they start applying it to themselves without understanding context. Now they get scared. If I have a little drop, am I going to get punished in the grave? And this is what starts the OCD. But it's because they did not understand the hadith in the proper context, right? Any other questions before we move on? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, did you hear the question? The question is, when people go to the bathroom, what are kind of like the guidelines for istinja? How much time should you spend? How exact do you have to be? In reality, there's something you have to remember, that many times, and you have to be very careful about reading answers and fatwas online, okay? Because if you get too trapped into that, you're going to be spending, I have clients who spend 6 hours in the bathroom. 6 hours. I have other clients, specialist doctors, who cannot practice because they are spending the entire day worried about a urine drop. I myself used to answer questions on fatwa sites for many years, since 2011. And I stopped doing that after I got into OCD counseling because I realized something. Everything we're saying here in these rules, there is a theoretical and there is a practical. Okay? When people get religious, they take the theoretical and they run with it even more than the scholars do. The scholars are not spending half an hour in the bathroom. There's no need for normal people to be doing that, right? And if it's a big problem that's coming all the time, this is why you have ma'zur, or ma'zur is excused. They have another ruling altogether, right? So now, when a person goes to the bathroom, they should spend a small amount of time cleaning themselves that normal people have to spend, okay? A minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, no problem. Okay, fine. They should not be using 10 jugs of water. You know, one of the problems that we have now is, think about it, the Sahaba, water was so rare. And they would not even have, they're not taking a whole water skin. They might be taking a little bowl of water, just a little bit of washing, right? Now let me ask you, these days we use one jug, we call it lota, I know you guys call it lota. You know, so you use one lota. And then I can even ask you, how many lota do you use? Like with my clients, I say, how many lota do you use? Oh, with 3, 4, 5. Okay, do you think the Sahaba had time to use one lota and then kind of like waddle with their pants around their ankles and go fill it up again and waddle back to the thing and do this 10 times? No, they didn't. They didn't. And did they have the shattafa, as they call it? We don't have an Urdu word for this, the spray, right? Some people call it the Muslim shower, some people call it whatever. In Arabic, they call it shattafa. You don't, sah? Yep. So they use the spray and they just, Niagara Falls has passed and they're still not clean. Okay? This is a sickness. This is not what Islam intends. This is not what Islam intends at all. Right? So when this happens, you're just supposed to use a little bit of water and that's it. Now, let me ask you another thing. The Sahaba, when they used that little bit of water, did they have any way of checking? Are they really clean or not? Do you have any way of checking? If you use one lota, one thing on the back, okay? How do you know if you're clean? What do you do? Okay, well, how do people check? What do they do? They use tissue, they check, they pat, and they look, oh, something's still there. Okay, lota again. Waddle to the sink, waddle back. Sorry, I told you I'm going to be very, very explicit in this class. I told you, but it's all for deen, right? Everything we say is not, is sake of deen. So you use another one, And then you see, again, oh gosh, another one. Now maybe you put your finger up a little bit high, more came out. Now you have to keep going back and forth. The Sahaba had no way of checking if something came out on the cloth or not, on the paper or not. So that they just get up and go. They use one, I think I'm okay. What does satisfied mean? It just means I did a normal thing. Is there any way you can smell? You can't smell it. Can you say, I think something's still there? No. It's it, finish. You did it, you use the water, you get up and go. So what does that mean as well? That means even when they used water, Sahaba still likely had some natural thing. Guys, we are human animals, okay? We are still part of Mother Nature. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us like that. So this idea that we're going to be surgically, sterilized, it's just you're never gonna achieve it. In fact, Allah made our body so it's constantly emitting impurities. I have to say this. Why? Because people get psychological problems because of this. Now, let's keep going. So once you are on the toilet, for women, it's drip, 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 pat or wash and go. For men, they have something called istibra. Because the male private part is a pipe. It's essentially a pipe. So the ulama say that you should make sure that the drops are out of that pipe before you go and you make wudu. Now, the ulama are assuming, sometimes the books assume, that you're going to make wudu right after you go to the bathroom. That's why they say everything has to come out. But as many men know, it doesn't all come out at that time. So instead of spending half an hour in the bathroom and doing jumping jacks and crossing your legs and touching your toes and all that thing, it's okay if you shake a little bit, you get out, and if somebody wants to put a tissue, they can. If somebody wants to take water and just sprinkle it, that's the sunnah to do. And you go. Make wudu a little bit later. Who says you have to make wudu right after you use the bathroom? People act like it's like a fard to use the bathroom, then make wudu. Oh, why can't you take 3 minutes in between? Oh, but I'm going to be late. It's okay. People have been doing it for centuries. You can do it too. So that's all you have to do. And there's no need to be squeezing, and you don't even have to use paper, put it in the crotch. I'll tell you something. A lot of the times, the answers online will tell you to do all kinds of things. I know people that have medically hurt themselves, bleeding, because they tried to purify themselves according to what somebody said online. And obviously, Islam doesn't tell you to hurt yourself. And none of these rulings of how to wash yourself, how exactly, are mentioned in the hadith. So where are they getting this from? There's ulama later on derive this and derive that. But you don't have to take all those details. Now, the other thing is this, and I'll end with this one. What was I going to say? Okay, I'll come back to it. So basically, those are the general laws of that. What was I going to say? Yeah. And I found a text written by Ibn Qudama al-Hanbali, who is a scholar who lived about 700 years ago. Okay? Oh, sorry, he lived a little bit more than that. And the one who's commenting, Ibn al-Qayyim. It's a text on waswasa. Okay? He said, this idea that you have to start jumping up and down and coughing and putting paper, all this is bid'ah. Okay? If it's a chronic problem, it's a different story. But generally speaking, you can just sprinkle a little bit of water, get up and go. Right? That's why you spend 1-2 minutes, make sure it's clear, and then you go. Okay, if there aren't any other questions. Also, it is difficult to avoid the little spray back of urine. So when you go to the bathroom, and sometimes there's a back spray, like ocean spray, like a little bit of something coming up. Because that's impossible to avoid, the pins and needles, the ulama say it's forgiven. So you don't even have to worry about that. Okay? And the same thing goes for when you're sitting on the toilet, if you're standing up. Now, is it permissible to stand up and urinate? Is it well, not for the sisters, but is it permissible for the, huh? Yeah? Okay, I'll tell you what it is. It's not haram, but it's not sunnah to stand up. So the sunnah is to sit down. Okay? But some people, they take it as though it's haram to do. There are certain times when it may be even better to stand up. When? When? Yeah, what's the point? You sit down, a bunch of non-Muslims, people who don't care about najasa have just gone, and you've gone to the mall or you've gone to some venue, and the bathrooms are just a mess. Okay? If you sit down there, you're going to get more dirty. And I'm sorry, sisters, I know you have to go through that sometimes. But, for men, if you want to you don't want to get into that and you just stood up and you went to the bathroom, that's permissible. Other times, yeah. You could do that. If you want to do that and you fulfill the sunnah, you get rewarded, inshallah, because you're doing sunnah. But sometimes it's not possible for them. Sometimes, for example, a person has to go, they're on a journey, a long journey, and they have to go to the bathroom on the side of the road. Like, obviously not in front of people, but like off into the woods. And the person has a choice, the man has a choice. Do you pull down your garment entirely and reveal yourself, or do you just stand up? So in those cases, it is permissible to do it, but it's obviously slightly disliked to do it, okay? Or someone has an injury, for example, yes. Any spray back. So when a person goes to the bathroom, there's a little bit of like light spray back. Now, splashback is on something that really bothers a lot of people, right? So you have to remember something. Now, I'm going to get, again, more graphic, and I apologize for this. They say that if the first, as one of the things that one scholar said, that the first thing that hits into the toilet and splashes back, that's actually pure. Because toilet water, when you flush it, is considered pure. I know it doesn't sound like that. But when you flush a toilet, the water that's there is actually pure until you make it najis. And then, yeah, if a lot splashes back and it's beyond that area, then they say you should wash it. Now, if you can't do that, then you just use a paper and you move along. Don't be scared. Yes? Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. So if it's the first thing going inside there and splashes back, then that's actually pure. It's still nasty, but it's pure. And remember something can be nasty, but pure legally, right? So praying on the bathroom floor, it's nasty. But it's technically, unless you actually see urine for sure, it's actually legally valid, right? So remember that, yes. That's a good question. So if you see wetness on the seat and you don't know if it's urine or not, then you assume it's water. Muslims use water. But if I go to a mall, if I'm in Square One and I see wetness on the seat, no, I'm going to assume that that's what it is, right? So that's a good question. If you go to the masjid, you assume, no, it's water. So always assume that things are pure. Always err on the side of purity. Always err on the side of it's valid, it's okay. And you only make it broken, impure, invalid when you have sure proof, right? And you will not be responsible for what you don't know. The Prophet ﷺ and the companions, it is narrated that sometimes they would pray in a sheep pen. You know when you keep sheep? Have you ever seen in Qurbani in Eid al-Adha time? And sometimes you go and you have like sheep in one place. How dirty is that ground? But if you can't see the najasa, you can even pray on that ground. Sahaba used to do it around their animals. I want you to imagine that in the streets of Medina, they didn't have cars. They had what? Donkeys, horses, camels. And where are they going to the bathroom? You think that they use the restroom? No, they're going to the bathroom right in the road. So when you're walking, the mud, and then when it rains, where does all that go? Just everywhere. So najasa was a part of the lives of people. You just had to clean yourself to a certain extent, right? So don't be afraid of what you don't know. Okay, next thing. If it's something, and you can read the whole notes, but I'm just going to explain it in a much more summarized form. And then we're going to get on to wudu and ghusl. Okay, so the first hour has been kind of najasa, and the next hour we'll take wudu and ghusl. If you want to wash something that has a body on it, like you see dried blood, or something like that, feces that's dried, as long as you just go and wash off the body of it once, go put it under the tap, go like that, it's done. Even if you see a stain is still is not considered in Islam. Now, do you have to use soap to wash? No. In Islam, water is enough. If it doesn't come out with water, it's forgiven. If it has a stain, it's forgiven. Sometimes you get your clothes back from the laundry and you're noticing yellowing stains or something on your undergarments, that's forgiven. It's clean. When it's something like urine, if you're pouring water on it, now the ulama say that you should, let's say something, I'm going to give you an example. So let's say, for example, urine falls somewhere on your clothing. So all you have to do is you pick up that one little area and you spot wash. 1, 2, 3, just a little bit. Wash, squeeze. Whoops. Wash and squeeze and pour and squeeze. You don't have to pour a lot of water. So it's in fact very, very little water because Sahaba had very little water. And you just have to spot, well, if you get something here, you don't have to wash the entire thing. Just go like this, take this little bit, like that, done. Okay, it's if you want. Now, if you have a tap, there are ulama who consider that that's like a river, like flowing water, and so you put something under the tap, like this, and it's done. When you do istinja, and you've just cleaned yourself, that hand is wet. Is that hand impure? No. When you use water and you clean the back, then the wet hand is also impure. That means when you pull up your pants, tie your drawstring or whatever, all that is pure water. Now, it doesn't mean it's not nasty. Please don't shake my hand after, or like touch me after now. Don't think that. We do wash our hands, it's sunnah. So remember, hygiene, adab, is different than legal purity, okay? Alhamdulillah. Okay, any other questions before we move on? We've talked a lot about najasa. Yes, sister. Yes, they can. No, you don't. Water. We just talked about this. Water is not wajib to use. It's sunnah to use. It's only wajib if it goes outside of the area of the private parts, right? That's different. Yes, sister. That's a very good question about dogs. And in fact, there are differences of opinion about dogs in Islam. And this difference of opinion has become very useful in our time. Because in the olden days, this idea of people having a dog as a pet, in the Muslim society, it wasn't around, right? Nowadays, we come to this issue where I have a business and a person has a legal right to come inside with their dog if their dog is a guide dog or a blind guiding dog, a service dog, yeah. Thank you. So in this case, there are different opinions. Imam Shafi'i said the dog and its entire body is impure. Okay? So nothing of it is pure. Imam Abu Hanifa said that only the saliva of the dog is impure and the rest of the body is pure. So even if you pet the dog, even if it brushes past you, it's no problem. And even in the case of Imam Shafi'i, if it's not like a wet transfer, like you see something actually transferring, then you don't even think about it. So in other words, you can go sit on the couch, you can go sleep on the bed, even though the dog has been there, not a problem. You can even pray on the ground, even though the dog has been there. Imam Malik's opinion of Medina, which is actually a very, very useful opinion, is that neither the saliva nor the body of the dog is impure at all, and only the urine and the excrement are impure. So what does this mean? I have one teacher of mine who, my sheikh, when he would go to his family, and his family had a dog, he would take Imam Malik's opinion because he's living around a dog. So the dog is going to slobber in different places. So it's not like there's only one thing in Islam. I know in our countries, we just take, oh, my dog is like, and unfortunately, we don't keep them as pets, but we don't also hate them to that extent, and we don't have to treat them like, oh my gosh, tell a friend, you gotta send your dog away. Because these days, for non-Muslims, they love their dogs more than they love their family members sometimes. It's true. So to tell them to put their dog away sometimes is very offensive to them, right? Okay, other questions before we move on? Yes.
I know you may have answered this, but just to be sure, like for any medical reason, if like there's droppings coming out, like in small amounts, does it still follow the rule that as long as it's within?
Yes. Yes. So as long as it's not more than this inner palm area, then it is excused. Whether it's coming out like from the front, from the back, chronically, not chronically. Now, if it's so chronic that you cannot even make wudu and pray for an entire prayer time, then you become ma'zur or excused. Then as much as comes out, it won't even break your wudu. Once you make your wudu once, even if it keeps coming out, it will not even break your wudu. That's in that case. And that's also useful for the woman who's experiencing abnormal bleeding after her period. So she's still supposed to be praying and fasting. Her maximum 10 days of period is over, and she's still having bleeding. The Prophet ﷺ said, you make wudu once, and if the blood comes out after that, you ignore it. It's okay. right? And you don't even have to purify your garment from it. Okay, yes. No, wudu and washing your, so inner and outer impurity are, purification are two completely different universes. Wudu is not affected at all by what's on your body outside. And what's on your body does not have anything to do with wudu. So I can make wudu with impurity on my body, it'll still be valid. Okay? And I can't, and if impurity is on my body, it will not break my wudu. So vice versa, right? Yes. If you pray on something that's not a carpet, does Allah accept your prayer? Yes, why not? And if you don't know, so we are supposed to pray on a pure place, but you don't have to go assuming that places are not pure. So for example, can you go to the park and pray on the grass? But what about people have their dogs there? The non-Muslims are walking their dogs. What about that? You just look at it. You don't even need to analyze it. Some people will get on their knees and start smelling. No, you just look at it. There's nothing there. Just pray. Did a dog pee there once upon a time? Probably a dog peed on every single area of this earth once upon a time, right? So you don't have to worry about that. You just look at it. It's pure. You pray. That's it. Yes. Yeah, we'll talk about that. Let me see. Is that going to come up? Madhi and money. Okay, we'll go into this section now. Any other questions about this place of prayer and body purity? If it's something that if you break your wudu again, then yes, you have to. But if it's some yeah. Yes, then in each prayer time, thank you for saying, if you have the medical, like the excuse, ma'adhur, where it keeps coming out so much that you can't even pray and make wudu, but it comes out, then you make the wudu once for that prayer time and use it for as many prayers as you want in that prayer time. When the prayer time ends, it breaks. Next prayer time, you make it once again and you do it for as many, and you can read Quran, touch Quran, you can do everything, tawaf, whatever you need to do. Yes. Your stitches. So that's a good question. Yeah. So yeah, if you have stitches or something, may Allah give us safety and protection, and the blood leaks out, then you will not. So again, it goes back to this. If blood leaks out of your wound, if it has a bandage on it, you don't have to look inside. You don't have to open the band-aid to see is blood coming out. But if it comes out of the band-aid too, then if it comes out, yeah, then that breaks your wudu, and then you have to make your wudu again. But if it's something where it's constantly oozing, then no. It just digs into your head, to the head a little bit. Yeah. Thanks. Thank you. Okay. Is good? Better? Okay. Because the other one is on?
Yeah, they're all off.
Yeah? Hello? Can you change? Okay, before people get too distracted, let's just wiggle your legs a little bit. You don't roll your toes or whatever you want to do. And let's sit back with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. My shaykh, every time He would do a long lecture. He would get up in the middle and move around a little bit and sit back down, just out of respect for those people who may have been wanting to do that for a while and they haven't been able to. Is there a question in the back, or are you just styling your hair, mashallah? Yes? No. You could have wudu for 10 hours and it doesn't break. Sometimes it happens. You make wudu, like you use a bathroom, you make wudu in Ramadan. You use a bathroom after suhoor, you make wudu, and you don't sleep, and you just keep going. You're like, wait a second, like I've had wudu since Fajr, and it's like almost Maghrib time. Could happen to somebody, right? Okay, now there's a question that our brother asked. It's a very important question about the different types of sexual discharge. Okay, first, we are not talking about what they call wadi. Wadi is what they call prostatic fluid. It happens especially to young men sometimes when their prostate produces a type of a grayish, unclear liquid that after they urinate, a few seconds after, they get a blob of some urine, of a liquid that comes out. That is not sexual fluid. You just treat that like urine. The second thing is called mani, which is when there is arousal, both in men and women, and there's a sense the body is preparing itself for intimate activity. So there is a very slippery, thin, sticky liquid that comes out. They call that madhi, or mazi, if you don't pronounce the dal. So madhi is treated just like urine. Okay? Now, if you're not sure, for men, during arousal, presexual fluid can come out. And for women, sometimes I get my clients telling me, I had a sexual thought. Now I'm not sure if it was madhi or if it was discharge. If you're not sure what it was, you ignore it. You just ignore it and keep going. Mani, not money, I'm talking about mani means semen. That is what comes out after there is orgasm and ejaculation. You can't miss it. It's something that you will know if it comes out. Okay? So, for example, after a wet dream, a lot of people have this waswasa. They wake up and they look in their underwear and they see some little bit of something is there and maybe dry. And they think, oh my God, did I have a wet dream? Then they go. I know a guy who takes a ghusl every single morning because he suspects that he had a wet dream. This is wrong. That little bit, a wet dream is something you will know if it's a wet dream. Only in the most rarest of occasions can you confuse it. If you live in like Arabia, it's so hot that everything dries up. Maybe that's different. But generally speaking, you understand it comes out, it's very thick, and that's what you call a wet dream. When that happens to you, a boy becomes baligh and becomes a man in Islam. Okay? Paying attention right now. So, this is the difference between mani, madhi, and wadi. Is that clear? Okay. Mani, semen, is it pure or impure? Here's the difference. The majority of scholars actually said it was impure. Okay? It's just like urine or something like that. So they said you have to, if there's too much there, you remove it. But we also know in the life of the Prophet ﷺ, subhanAllah, so we know these intimate details and it helps us, that there was the wife of the Prophet ﷺ once saw a little bit of that mani on the garment. And what did she do? She just scratched it off. Because when it gets dry, it cakes like this and finish. That was considered purifying it for that one substance. And this is very interesting that there's an exception for that one substance. Other scholars, and this is a minority opinion, they said that is proof that it's actually pure. So some scholars felt that mani is impure. I think the opinion that we are teaching here is that it is impure, meaning najasa. However, there is this allowance that if it dries, you can scratch it and take it off. You don't necessarily need to wash it. Okay, any other questions about that before we move on? Great. What happens when you are walking and your leather socks or your shoes has najasa underneath it? How do you clean it? Do you have to go and wash it? What do you do? When you're walking, you don't know if you stepped on dog mess. You stepped in a puddle, you don't know. You just keep walking. So what they said is you have to rub it on the ground. But remember, what does that mean? When you're walking, aren't you rubbing your shoes on the ground? You are. This is why after you walk in your shoes for a couple of months, the soles are worn out. Why? Because you're actually rubbing it against the ground over and over. So as my teacher said, he said, listen, yes, the law says you're supposed to rub it on the ground to purify it, but just by walking around, you're purifying your shoes all the time. So you don't need to check your shoes. So if you want to pray in your shoes, you can do that. And you don't need to check so closely. You just, my shoes are clean and that's fine. Okay? Okay. Any other questions before we move on to for bleeding? Oh, you only have to wash it if it's time to pray and it becomes out of the more than the area. So you're allowed to have an allowance of an inner palm. But if it's just like a cut and it's a little bit bleeds and you take a tissue like this, I don't have to wash it. I can just dab it away or something. Yes, the wudu breaks as long as the blood exits the cut, the wudu breaks. But as long as the blood goes from inside to outside the body and touches a part of your skin outside, then it breaks. Right? Same thing if the injection is withdrawing blood. Once it comes out of your body, then that will break you. Right? Yes. Oh, I can't hear what you're saying. No, you can keep it's they call it nur ala nur. Like it's good if you want mustahab, if you want to renew your wudu, that's no problem. But some people do it obsessively, so it's also good to break that and pray 2 or 3 prayers with one wudu, just to say you can do it this way or do it this way. Right? Okay. Next thing, there's a bunch of other details with like how you clean something, but I'm not going to get into that because we're actually getting late to talk about wudu. So here's the first thing about wudu. Can anyone tell me the ayah of wudu? Can anyone tell me the ayah of wudu? It goes like this. يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا قمتم إلى الصلاة فاغسلوا وجوهكم وأيديكم إلى المرافق وامسحوا برؤوسكم وأرجلكم إلى الكعبين وإن كن and it goes on. O believers, when you rise up for prayer, when you stand up to go pray, and you don't have wudu, wash your faces and your hands up to the elbows and wipe your head and wash your feet to the ankles. How many things are mentioned in the Quran to make wudu? How many things? 4 things. Okay? This is why, according to one of the scholars, there's different madhabs, right? There's different opinions, but we're teaching on one of the Hanafi school. In that opinion, the fard acts of wudu are only 4. Everything else, so wash your face, wash your arms, including the elbows, wipe your head, some part of your head, and wash your feet to the including the ankles. And their proof that nothing else was fard was they said Allah told you to do exactly this in Quran, and Quran has a higher authenticity place. And what about 3 times? What about rinsing the nose and the mouth? What about right side then left side? What about the ears? What about wiping the whole head? They said, those scholars said that this is known from the Sunnah, but it's not fard, it is Sunnah. Meaning if you leave it out, your wudu is fine. But you shouldn't leave it out all the time without an excuse, because that's abandoning the Sunnah. So just because it's very important to know the maximum and the minimum too. A lot of people learn the maximum, but they don't learn the minimum. So you know what happens? They get overwhelmed. For example, in some cultures, what do they say? What is Isha? 4 sunnah, 4 fard, then 2 sunnah, then 3 witr, then 2 nafil. How did you guys memorize it? I don't know. Yeah. How many rakats does that equal in the end? 17, right? So if you teach it that way, you know what, I'm going to be very honest. You know what ends up happening? You'll say, I don't have time to pray Isha. Why didn't you pray Isha? I can't pray. I have 17 rakats, I can't do that. Right? You say, no. How much of fard was there? Only 4. And if you take wajib, witr, 3. If you take witr is wajib. So you didn't have to do all. It's important to know when you can minimize. Same thing with wudu. If I'm in my office, if I'm in an office building, or I'm in an airplane, I mean, I could do a sunnah wudu, but I'm going to wet the entire floor. Or sometimes you're sick. Or sometimes there's a reason why you just have to use a little bit. It's cold. So knowing just the minimum wudu is actually very important. It helps you do things quicker, right? Now, I'm going to show you a video of myself doing the bare minimum wudu. Bare minimum. So I'm not saying this is the ideal, I'm saying this is the minimum. And this is what I use to show my clients who have waswasa. This was done a couple of years ago when I had more hair and less grays. Okay. Oh yeah, there's audio. Yeah. Oh no, it's okay. I mean, you can just notice the demonstration. I'll play the audio from here. Oh wait, the audio's not playing. Oh, the audio won't play, I think, because I'm plugged in. It's okay. It's okay. If it's just like a 2-second clip, it's like literally 30 seconds. So this is a 44-second clip, meaning and for part of it I'm talking, meaning a fard wudu should not take you more than 30-35 seconds. Okay? Oh, it's okay. It's gonna take a while, yeah. Okay, so here I'm telling you that this is going to be. I'm going to make a fard wudu. And this is back in Jordan. And I was much skinnier too. So, okay. So I'm turning on tap. If you want, wash your hands once. Wash my face once. Look how fast I'm doing that. Once my hands. And I didn't miss a spot. Wiping my hands with my head like that. Just took a little bit of water. That's it. Done. You notice I didn't even do my toes because the water already went into the toes. Done. That is a fard wudu. Okay. Questions? You don't, because that's sunnah. Khilal sunnah. So this is what I'm saying. When I put my toes under the tap, it's obvious. Like my toes are not that fat and big that the water's not going to get in between. You just go like that and the water will go. In fard, I ensured that. I ensured it. It's touching. If you see that wudu, my entire foot was wet. My entire face was wet. I just did this. The water, when you take the water, and for people who have beards, if it's a very thick beard, then you just need to do over the surface of the beard. You don't need to actually penetrate into the beard itself. And if it's a very thin beard, then the water will automatically pass through. So as soon as you go like this, you notice I'm not going like this. I'm not wiping my ears. I'm not doing down here, right? So it's very simple. And when I wash my hands in the beginning, you don't even have to do that. I just did that to show you. They wash my hands. So I didn't even have to do that. That's even more. And when I wipe my head, they say, what is the minimum wiping of the head? One hand. Just one hand. There's differences of opinion. Imam Shafi said, even if you do 3 hairs, the wiping is sufficient. So our sisters who are wearing hijab, they don't want to take off their hijab when they're in public, let's say, or making wudu. That's one opinion that you can follow, right? Underneath the hijab. Yes, question. Just tap with a wet hand, with a fresh wet hand. That. Oh, we're gonna get to that. Good question. Yes, sister. Your rings. If you have a cut, you can wipe over the Band-Aid. And if it's bad for the Band-Aid to be wiped over, you can even skip even wiping over it. But if you can wipe over it, and I'm not talking about drenching it, take a little moist hand, just go like that. But if that's going to harm, then don't do that. Brother in the back. Yes? I'm sorry? Run it again. I'll run it again. Okay, so watch that again. So you notice I didn't put my entire arm under the tap. I didn't have to. I just used the rest of my hand to help it along. So there, I did that. That's just the beginning. I didn't even have to do that. There we go. Once on the face, done. Use my hand to take the water. That's enough. Tap once. See, the water's already flowing. I just helped it a little bit around the ankle. Touched it once. That's it. Done. So you cannot wipe your feet, but what you have to wash a little minimally. So what you can do, actually, this is actually a confusion that people have. It's a good question. In the Shia sect, they wipe the foot. We don't allow that in the Ahlul Sunnah. Yeah. That's a good question. So our sister asked, I always advise people to wear thicker socks. Some people follow the opinion that you have to only wear leather socks or waterproof socks. The opinion that my teachers taught me. And then there's another opinion that says any sock, as thin as it can be, you can wipe over it. Once you wore it on wudu, you had wudu washing your feet, then you wore the sock. Then for 24 hours after you break wudu the first time, then you can keep wiping over them. My teachers, what they said was in the middle, where it should be a thick sock, like a kind of a sports sock that you buy at Walmart, you know? And then you just wipe over them. And how do you wipe over them? Like this. So. No, you don't need to wipe the bottom. Yeah, in fact, this is what Imam Ali said, radiallahu anhu. He said, if the deen was only by the aql alone, then we would be wiping the bottom of the sock, not the top of the sock. But our deen is not only by aql, it's by revelation. That's a good question. And if you have a hole in the sock, is that okay? That's okay. As long as the hole is not like 3 toes sticking out of it, you know, then it's fine. Yeah, it's not easy. Yeah, this is Jordan when the sinks are big. That's a good question. What is the ruling when the sink is too small? And listen, let's be honest. The Sahaba were not putting their feet up and putting it in a sink. It's not physically easy for many of us to put the sink up, right? I get so annoyed when I come to a bathroom and the sink is almost like chest height, you know, like up to middle of your... How are you supposed to put your foot up inside that? So it is permissible, definitely, to go like this. You take some water in your hand, and I don't know, stand on a towel or something like that. And if you had to wash your foot, you can go like this. Yes. Oh yeah, yeah. You can do this thing where you wash your foot and you're about to break wudu, so you quickly put on your socks just so you can wipe. And then you just put on your socks and then you break your wudu and then you can wipe for the rest of the day. No. No, it's not necessarily more virtuous. No, you can wear as much as you want and you can wipe over socks, it's fine. Right? Yes. This is a good question. The debate was this. The debate was what kind of foot gear can you wipe over? So most of the hadith, they're talking about a leather sock called a khuffain. And they said that was a leather sock that was basically, you could actually walk around like a shoe. That's how they used to wear it. There is another hadith, however, about what they call the jawrab. And the jawrab was a kind of a knit. renewing sound. Okay, there we go. And so there is a report about the use of a sock. Now, the ulama disagreed. What is the nature of that? So some said it has to be waterproof. Some said it has to only be leather. Exactly what the Prophet ﷺ used, only that. Others said, no, look at the quality of what's covering your foot. And some said, well, what is a sock? A sock is something that stays on your foot. A sock is something that protects your foot. It doesn't allow water to come in like that. That's how they disagreed. So what in the Hanafi school, what they say is when you wipe your foot with a dripping wet hand, the water shouldn't go through the sock right away to your foot. So if it's thick, then it'll stop it. And that's why they said, and in the Indian Hanafis and the Arab Hanafis, they differ on this too. The Indian Hanafis only say, no, only leather or like sealskin, waterproof. And the Arab Hanafis generally say as long as it's thick. So that's a lot of detail. But that answer your question? Not waterproof, no. Even if you go to Walmart and you buy those like thicker hockey socks, or like just normal sports socks, that according to this opinion is fine. But there are scholars in the Hanbali school, the ulama in Saudi Arabia, for example, they will allow you to wipe over any sock you want. Does that make sense? So there's different opinions. It really depends which scholar you follow. It should not penetrate through the sock right away. That's what it means. Okay? Yes. Oh yeah, when I mean bare minimum, I mean you can pray with that, you can do whatever you want with that. So sometimes you're at school and you can't make a long wudu, that you can do that. But that's not the standard. Okay, like the standard should be the Sunnah. We're going to talk about that. But the reason why I'm teaching the minimum is because in many cultures they don't teach the bare minimum. So people actually don't know how to make it easier for themselves. Yes. That's a good addition. The sock has to cover the ankles entirely. So you can't have socks that are below the ankle. That's good. Yeah. That would have come up in yes. Yeah. There's has to be at least a few drops, 1 or 2 drops come off of the limb. That's washing it, right? Yes, Brother Faisal. I used to buy those, yeah. Yeah. Okay, this is a very good question. What is do I have to go buy the $30, $40 sealskin, absolutely waterproof socks? Because what we did was, now they said, okay, they went to the hiking socks. Basically, these are like extreme sport socks, and the Muslims started buying them, right? I think we buy them more than the non-Muslims now. So the question is, it comes down to what? Who you follow. If you follow, generally Indo-Pak Hanafi, they will say use those like leather socks or the sealskin thing. On the other side, I mentioned the scholars in Saudi, from the Salafi school, from Hanbali school, even some other modern scholars, they allow any sock whatsoever, even if it's the thinnest dress sock. What I was taught from my teachers, if you're following on the Hanafi school, which is kind of a more balanced position, I feel, is that the sock should be thick enough that when you wipe over it with a wet hand, it doesn't like send the water right through. So it's not waterproof, but it has a little bit of body to it, okay? And this means that most sports socks will be fine. On that opinion, then no. Yeah, that's fine. That's definitely probably fine. And now the way that they make socks in the modern world, you'll be surprised how much they can absorb. They're pretty much, many of them qualify. But for myself, I take that position of the middle position. But for my children, I let them do whatever they want. Yeah? You can go for 24 hours after you first break your wudu. So let's say I wash my feet in the morning. I take a shower, I wash my feet, I put on my socks. It's not 24 hours from when I put it on. It's when I first break my wudu, 24 hours from there. But if I break my wudu after 10 hours, the 24 hours starts when you first break your wudu. No, you cannot take the socks off. Once you take the socks off, even one, it's finished. Yeah, no, you can, if you have them on, you can put it in, you can scratch your ankle, but they have to be remaining covering the bigger part of the foot. You just can't take them off, and you can sleep in them. You can, you can do whatever. Just don't shower in them. Yeah. Yeah, you can't take them off if you want to keep your wudu. Yeah, once you take it off, you break your wudu. Now what happens if the 24 hours expires and you're wearing your sock and you have to take off your socks? All you have to do is wash your feet again. You don't need to make your entire wudu again. Just wash your feet again, put your socks right back on for another 24 hours, right? Sister. Okay, that's a very important question. Let's pause the makeup question and let's do sock questions and come back to the makeup question. Yes. Yeah, that's a good question. That's another question. Can you pick and choose different opinions? And the answer to that is, it depends who you ask. Okay, so here's the bottom line. Just one second. Here's the bottom line. It's better to stick to one school if you follow it, because that's a consistent way of practicing. So if you follow the Hanafis, you can follow the Hanafis. If you follow Malikis, if you want to follow the ulama of Saudiya, you can follow them, and because it's less confusing for you. But if there's a need, if there's a reason why you have to, then it is permissible to take an opinion from another school. Does that make sense? So when I talked about the wiping the hair, there is even opinion that you can wipe over the hijab. That is one opinion that some of the Saudi scholars gave. But the rest of the majority of schools did not say a woman can wipe over a hijab, right? So if you want to take that position, that's their choice. But generally, as people get more and more practicing, they like to stay consistent with a scholar or an imam so that they can learn more systematically, unless there's a real reason. Make sense? Yes. No, yeah. You don't have to have separate undergarments to pray. You can just spot clean that. If you can't clean it even, look, it's better to never miss your prayer. This idea that I'm unclean, so I miss my prayer, don't even do that, because there are some scholars that even say, what's the connection between having impurity and prayer? Some didn't even see that connection. So, yes, was there a question coming? Yes. Yes, you can pray in your shoes. Because the shoes don't usually cover your ankles. If you had boots, yeah, you can wipe on the boots too. As long as you don't take the boots off. So as soon as you go home, take the boots off, then your wudu is broken. But you can wear boots if you want to. Long shoes, yes. So at your office, you can do it. Yeah. Question here. There's just different opinions on what do they consider a sock, right? So if you want to wipe on those socks that you're wearing and follow that opinion, you can. And if you want to follow this opinion, depends who's your teachers and what your school of thought is, right? Yes. No. There's nothing like that. No. That's a big misunderstanding of what the ruling is. You don't have to reveal your ankles when you're praying. That was for people who are wearing a gown like how I'm wearing, dishdasha, and they're dragging it on the ground. So they're covering their ankles. It's not talking about taking your socks down, right? Yeah. Yes. Yes, entirely covering. And it can have a hole in it as well, a little bit of holes in it. It's not a problem. Yes. Good question. And actually, we're going to get to this if we have time. If you take a ghusl, you take a shower, you do not need to make wudu again. That counts as your wudu. No, I mean, there's different opinions, but the opinion that I'm teaching here, that you don't need the niyyah to do it. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what did He say? He said, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, idha qumtum ila as-salati faghsilu wujuhakum. O you who believe, when it's time to pray, you stand up to pray, wash your face. Allah didn't say make your intention. Allah just said do it. So when you go to the shower, you wash your face anyways. You wash your hands, so you fulfill the requirements of wudu. You don't need to do it again. So is that understood? The opinion that I'm giving is that the wudu and ghusl, you do not need an intention for it. And in the end, what is intention anyways? What is intention? In your heart, but what is it really? Let me ask you, did you intend to come to the masjid today? You didn't intend to come to the masjid? You mean you just came here by accident? What's that? But when did you end up just like going to Ridgeway and by accident you came here? But so you intended to walk over. Okay. Did you like make a thing in your mind? I now intend for the sake of Allah to walk to the masjid to attend the. No, you didn't. So we often think intention means you have to make a formula in your mind. This is not. It's not how the early Muslims did it. Let's put it that way. You don't have to say nawaitu usalli arba rak'at dhuhr muwajjihin lil qibla. No, you don't have to do that. As long as you know what you're doing inside. So someone asks you, "Hey, where are you going?" "I'm going to here." "What are you doing?" "I'm going to pray." That's it. Once you know what you're doing. And there are very few people in the world that start to rinse their mouth 3 times and nose 3 times and they don't know what they're doing. Right? So you don't need an intention. Even if you get pushed inside a pool, you have wudu. Okay? Yes. No. So this is a good question. Some of the scholars said that if you touch your private part with the inside of your palm, yeah, the sister said, don't you have to repeat your wudu because when you're dressing yourself, your wudu breaks? And I said, no, after the shower. When you take the shower, Imam Shafi'i said that if you touch yourself with the inner palm, your private, that you break your wudu. And many of the other scholars did not agree. And they said, no, even if you touch your private, right, it doesn't break your wudu. So putting on your clothes and stuff like that, you'll be fine. You don't need to remake your wudu. No. If you take a shower, you don't need to make wudu after that. You're good. Fadl. Can you say it louder? No, you don't have to make istinja before you make wudu necessarily. It's not part of the wudu itself. It's a preparation to pray if you needed to make istinja. But istinja is sunnah. It's not fard if there's not a lot of impurity around. Yeah, if you go into a pool and you come out, you have wudu automatically. Yeah. So what about the chlorine and the chemicals? It's at the end of the day, when you look at that, you still call it water. So then you don't say, if it was chlorine that you're jumping into, that's different. But you're jumping into a pool. So even in the water that we use now from the tap, there's fluoride in it. There's some stuff in it, but we say it's water, right? So good question. Lots of questions. Nice way. That is wudu. You have wudu. You have not done ghusl, you still have wudu. Yep. You go into the shower, just because you come back from the gym and you're hot, you just take a shower, you got wudu. Right? That's the fard aspect. Now, we're talking about the sunnah aspect is something different. It's sunnah to do it 3 times, to intend, to do it properly, wudu. That's sunnah. You can even do that in the shower. I'm talking about bare minimum. Right? Bare minimum. No, the minority is that your private parts, touching them breaks wudu. That's a minority opinion. Yeah. Majority said it's part of your body. Not touching something does not do anything. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, algae in a pool, that's fine. Yeah, look, in the wells back in Medina, they used to even sometimes have little bits of goat droppings floating around in the well. And people would wash their najis garments inside the well, and people would take the same water to make wudu. So it's not as exact as we always think, right? Seeing private parts does not break wudu. Touching someone else's private parts does not break wudu. The only time, and since you asked, the only time that wudu breaks when it comes to touching is when the erect private part of the male touches the bare private part of the female, even without penetration, that breaks wudu. Okay? That's in a very, very rare case, of course, of intimate relations between spouses. Other than that, only Imam Shafi'i said that touching your wife breaks your wudu. The other scholars did not believe that. They said that the meaning in the Quran, when Allah says, or when you touch women, it means when you have intercourse with them. That's what it meant. Changing your child's diaper does not break your wudu. Being vomited on does not break your wudu. If you're at a restaurant and a kafir drops alcohol all over you, does not break your wudu. You should wash it off, but it doesn't break your wudu. Over there. You have to talk really loud because you don't have a mic. I do. Yeah? Yes? Yeah. Yeah, mashallah, are young people asking pool questions? Yeah, so if somebody pees in the pool, you know what? If it's a big pool and someone pees in it, you can still make wudu from that water. It's a big pool. And if it's a small pool and someone peed in it and you don't know, then you go on assuming it's fine, right? Yeah. Okay, let's get back to this. So, Brother Faisal, I don't think we're going to have time to finish everything about tahara today. We have to, but then we have to do Salah as well. So, oh, I have time now. I can stay. Because we started late too. Okay. Yeah, that way when we get next week, we can talk about Salah. Okay. Now, Bismillah. What are the Sunnah acts of wudu? The Sunnah acts of wudu. Now look at it. This means you do not have to do it. This means if you do it, you get rewarded. And if you don't do it, you are not punished for it. Oh, sorry, there's a question. Oh, the makeup question. Okay, the makeup question. It depends if the makeup, do you have to, does wearing makeup block your face from making wudu? Or do you have to wipe the makeup off completely? So this depends on whether the makeup is waterproof. If it's like Maybelline, waterproof mascara, this thick waterproof mascara. Yeah, I have daughters. I know some things about these things. And then yeah, you would have to wipe that off. But if it's like, you put a little bit of foundation and whatever you call it, these things, and it's understood that the water will pass through that. If it's light, it passes through that, even if the color still stains your skin. Right? Yes. If it's waterproof and very thick, you have to you just wash it off. But otherwise, if it's not, you can put the water over if it's light, and it'll be assumed to pass through the skin. Right? That's why the ulama even said, a woman who's doing henna on her hands, mehndi, even the hard one, they said that if you put water over it, it'll still reach inside the hands, and still the wudu will be valid. I'm talking about when the hard henna is still on the hand. So imagine for light makeup. Yeah, nail polish blocks wudu. There is no such thing yet that I have seen proven as breathable nail polish or wudu friendly or halal nail polish. If a woman wears nail polish, that's her choice, but you cannot make wudu while covering your nail with nail polish, according to the vast majority of opinions that I've seen. There is someone who said that if you put an eyedropper on the what's it called, the nail polish, then this one brand, after a long time, it goes through, so they call it breathable. But you don't sit there with your hands soaking in water long enough to do that. So that's it. And I'm not talking about the ruling of using nail polish. I'm talking about, is wudu allowed with it on? And the answer is no. As long as you, like, if you have a little bit of drops of water, and you've touched the area, it'll soak through. Yeah, but that's how you wash it off too, right? It goes through. It's water soluble actually. So you can take a little bit of drops and just apply that, and that'll as long as it covers the area of the hand amount, and according to Imam Shafi, even 3 years. Okay, let's go on to the sunnah acts of wudu. So the first thing you do is you make an intention. Intention doesn't mean you have to say something. Intention just means, I just want to do it. I know I want to do it. The next thing of sunnah is to use the miswak. Okay, that we know that, to use something that's there. You can use any brush, but you get an extra, even better reward if you use the actual miswak. But if you don't have a miswak, even if you took a toothbrush, you can use it. And if you don't have that, the Prophet ﷺ told us that even your fingers is a miswak for the one who does not have a miswak. So if you want to get the reward of cleaning your teeth, then you can go like this. Even like, you know how you used to brush your teeth when you used to sleep over at your friend's house when you were a kid and you didn't have a toothbrush like that. Just like going like this, okay? So next thing is recite tasmiyah. Tasmiyah means Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Okay, so you say Bismillah when you go to, it's just Bismillah when you begin the wudu. Now, if you're in the bathroom, this is people often ask this. If you're in the bathroom, technically, you're not supposed to recite the dhikr in the toilet. But what the ulama say is, if you do this, then the sunnah of saying the tasmiyah will go completely. Because everyone makes wudu in the bathroom. Most people don't make wudu in the kitchen sink. So what they say, some of the ulama say, if the seat is down, there's no impurity in there, you're not using the toilet, you're using the sink, you can say the bismillah to do your wudu out loud, it's no problem. Okay? Next thing is, it's sunnah to maintain the order of wudu. So let me ask you, if I wash my feet first, then I wipe my head, then my face, then my arms, is that valid? Okay, here, order is sunnah. Tartib. Yeah, I can wash my foot first, then I wash my face, then I wash my arms, then I wipe my head. It's not the way you're supposed to do it, understand? When does this become useful? When you made wudu and then you forgot to do something and you went and you did it again, then you did it out of order, right? You don't have to start your wudu all over again. So I made wudu and then I realized, oh my gosh, I forgot to wash my left hand. For sure. I'm not talking about waswasa. I mean, I can see it's completely dry and I know I didn't wash it. Then I can just go wash it like this. I don't have to start the wudu all over again. So it doesn't need to be in order. But sunnah is you do it in order that Allah said. Face, arms, head, feet. That's the very next point. MashaAllah. You're a mind reader, Brother Faisal. To proceed successively without pausing, that's called muwalah. Muwalah means to proceed successively without without pausing. What that means is you don't wash your face and then you go take a phone call and then you wash your arm, then you go get a delivery from the Amazon guy, then you come back. In other words, they say before the one limb dries, you should wash. It doesn't mean for 1 second you can't take a break. But this is sunnah. So that means if you did wash your face and an hour later, you came back and washed your arm. Then 2 hours later, you washed your left hand. And 3 hours later, you wiped your head. And then you washed your feet an hour after that. As long as you didn't break wudu in between, it would still be valid. So obviously, this is not the sunnah way to do it. But it's valid. So what does this mean? Why is this useful? If you forgot to do something, 2 hours later, you can come back and, I forgot to wipe my head. But now, what happens if you have a waswasa? Wipe my head or not? What should you do? Should you do the cautious thing and wipe your head? Or should you just ignore it and go on? Which one should you do? Ignore it and you go on. You know what? This is why I think it's Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu. There was a waswasa that was coming to him. Shaitan was bringing a waswasa that you didn't wipe your head. So he said, I'm not going to wipe my head now because I know I made my wudu and you have to prove that I didn't wipe my head. So you don't have to go check. Because normally a human being goes on autopilot, they will do everything. Same thing with your salah. We'll talk about that. I don't know if I did Fatiha or not. You don't have to remember if you did it. It's understood. The person will do everything. If you forgot it, leave it. Okay? You just keep going. Yes. Yeah, you can say it before you go into the washroom. You can say it in your heart as well. But this is why I said the ulama make exception, because nowadays, look, in other countries, the toilet and the sink are separate. In our country, the toilet and the sink are right beside each other. So they said as long as you have the lid closed and you're not going to the bathroom, you can say the tasmiyah while you're doing it inside the bathroom. Okay? All right. And that means then you can also talk. So if I'm brushing my teeth, I can talk to my wife outside because I'm in the bathroom, but I'm not in the toilet. Okay, let's keep going. Next thing, wash. So the sunnah is to. Okay, so if I had the clip on, it would be easier to demonstrate it. So I make my miswak, I say Bismillah, I have intention, then I wash my hands up to and including the wrists, first thing. Now, thank you. Okay. So I start washing my hands up to the wrists, okay? Then what do? Rinse my mouth 3 times. The minimal, of course, is just to bring it in. Sunnah is that you don't have to do that. But if you took it and you just put it in your entire mouth, that's good. If you did it extra, that's good too. Okay? And then you take water up your nose. Now, what does this mean? It doesn't have to go all the way up to here, like so you get like a brain freeze or something. Okay? Just breathe it slightly, and so it just fills the nostrils, and then you go to the left. That's sunnah. You do that 3 times. Some schools of thought, they do the mouth and nose in the same one. They go. That's okay to do as well. The next thing is you make hilal of the beard. So then you wash your face, right? And then you make hilal of the beard. So like that. You take extra water. And if you didn't do it, no problem. Do you have to wash this part of the beard that's hanging off your face? No, it's not in your face. The only part of the beard is the surface that is touching your actual chin and your jawline. That you have to put water over. But what falls, you don't have to wet. If you did it, sunnah is good. Next thing is to rub the limbs when you wash them. Now this is where you have to be very careful, because this is where waswasa comes. If you did, it's called dalk. If you did it once, that's good. Do you have to keep going like this? Literally, some people get into a problem where they keep doing this. A man came to Ibn al-Jawzi, and that's good. A man came to Imam Ibn al-Jawzi, and he said, Sheikh, help me. I dip my entire hand in a bucket of water, in my entire arm. When I bring it out, I still feel like water has not reached everywhere. So imagine people who are like keep rubbing. Oh no, I have to keep going. He's dipping his hand in a bucket of water, and he brings it out, and he's like, I still have a doubt, did water reach everywhere? You know what the Imam said to him? He said, you don't have to pray. He said, Sheikh, why? It's because you're majnoon. You're crazy. This is insanity. Now, you'll be surprised. I actually know many people, because it's my job, who actually get into this, where it's a type of psychological problem to think that you're not clean after you just do the normal act. Allah is not looking at if you didn't do what your mind tells you to do. Allah is not judging you by that. You do the normal sunnah, and after that you leave it. Okay, Bismillah. It's sunnah to start with the right and then go to the left with your arms and your feet. Not with your face. So you don't have to wash the right side of your face, then left side. But with your arms, you start with the right, then you go to the left, same thing with the feet. The next thing is, it's sunnah to wipe the entire head and ears with the same water with wet hands once. So the minimal of wiping on the head was this. But the sunnah is to go like this. Like this. Once. Other opinions say like this. Or is it specific? So what they say, like they have derived ways, but it's not necessarily you have to do it that way to fulfill the sunnah. But they say like use the index finger here, curl around the inner ear canal, use your thumb to come up, then you use the pinky. But it's very intricate, so you don't have to do it that way. And sometimes it's good to switch it up You know why? Just to tell your nafs not to stick to only one thing. Because this is where OCD starts coming into people. They get waswasa. I didn't do it properly. I have to do it again and again and again. Yes, sister. Just what's on your head. So what's on your head is, just what ends basically over here. It's not even here, just like this. You don't have to go all the way down. That would be very hard for some women. Yes. It's just symbolic, really. It's just no. You're not taking, in the Shafi school, they take new water, they do it 3 times, but generally speaking, that's a minority opinion. No, as long as you just get it wet with the same water, the point is you're just, wetting it, basically, wiping it. It's not washing. Yeah, if you can take your hijab off and do it, that's best. If you're in a place where you feel that you can't or for some reason it's difficult, then you can even take one wet hand. That's enough, okay? Or if you can, I don't know if you can come from the other side. I don't know if that's, you guys know better, if you can come from the bottom. But the point is, you don't have to take it off. The minority opinion is that you can wipe over the hijab. But that's a minority opinion. That's in some of the Saudi scholars opine that. Yeah, just touch it. Touch it once with the wet hand. Yeah. Yes, my friend. Why do you have to put water up your nose? Just to clean it. Because when you blow it out, you'll see how much stuff comes out. Especially if you live in countries where there's a lot of smog and dust, you'll be surprised that the hikmah of tahara in Islam is amazing. How healthy it keeps you. Yeah. Yeah, but when you put water up, if there's anything that's any germs and stuff, it just comes out, right? Yeah, it's very useful actually. Yeah. Fadl. So talking during wudu, if it's for dunyawi reasons, it's not good. It doesn't mean it's haram. Like I can say I'm making wudu and I tell my wife, turn the stove off. I can say that, right? Or I pick up the phone, can I call you back? Okay, that's okay. But about dunya, you don't talk. But if it's to teach something, or for deen, you can keep talking through your wudu too. Because you're teaching it. No, it's not haram. It's not haram. Even talking in a bathroom, it's not good to do, but it's not haram if you did it. Yeah, it's not good. Yeah, it's disliked. Okay, let's keep going. Making khilal, starting from the tips of the fingers and toes when you're washing them. So, and making khilal of the fingers and toes. How's that? Khilal means like this. Wash, or with your toes. All of that is sunnah. So what you should do, sometimes do it most of the time. And sometimes leave it. Sometimes do it, wash just once. Sometimes wash just twice. The Prophet ﷺ, sometimes he washed only once. Sometimes he washed only twice. Why? To show the range. So don't let your mind get so stuck on one thing that if you don't do that, you feel like you have to do it again. Never, ever repeat your wudu for a doubt. Ever do that. Never, ever keep doing istinja for a doubt. Never repeat your prayer for a doubt. Because at that point, you're not doing it for Allah. You're doing it just to satisfy shaitan's waswasa. Okay? All right, so I think we've almost, we just have to do ghusl now. So we talked about those things which break wudu. We have a few more minutes? Yeah? Okay. What things break wudu? We talked about anything that comes out of the male and female private part, the anus, that breaks wudu. Gas that comes through the female private part from the vagina does not break wudu. So a lot of times people get this wrong. That does not break wudu. Sometimes you are praying and you feel a little tickle. You feel a little tickle. That is not necessarily breaking wudu. Why? Sometimes there's just air that gets trapped between those areas as you're walking. And when you move in a different position, it just comes out, but you're like, wait, I felt something, but there was no movement inside. So those little tickles is just air that gets trapped there, and then it gets released. If you're not sure, you just assume nothing happened. What else? We talked about vomiting already. when you vomit more than a mouthful. We talked about in intimacy when the erect private parts touch each other without a barrier. Let's see, what else? Laughing during prayer. If you are a baligh person and you laugh out loud in the prayer so people can hear you, your wudu and your salah break, according to that opinion. That's the hadith, right? If you're not sure, then you don't assume anything. In fact, some people get a waswasa of laughing in prayer. There might be even a brother watching this, I love you, but his entire waswasa is, I keep thinking I'm laughing during my prayer. I told him, laugh as much as you want. Because it's not about a psychological trick. Am I laughing or not? It's about, you actually burst out laughing and it's something funny. And if you're keeping it in, like sometimes you're going, you're just among kids, nobody heard it, whatever, it doesn't break your wudu. Okay, if you make actual sound and letters, then that's different. Okay, what else? Falling asleep and wudu. There's different opinions. I'm just going to give you the bottom line. If you fall asleep with your buttocks firmly planted, meaning you're not sleeping like this, you're not sleeping like this, so gas cannot escape. If you sit down in your seat and you try to pass gas, you can't. That's why people always turn to the side, right? So it's very hard to do. So therefore, if you fall asleep in this position, even if your back is up against something, but you're upright. So you're on a plane, you're on the train, you're on somewhere, and you fell asleep on the plane. 10 hours later, you woke up. Do you still have wudu? Yes. But if you turned over like this, so that your buttocks were not there even for a second, your wudu is gone. Okay? Any questions about that? That's a next week question. Yes, that's a very good question. Yes. But if I start a namaz question, a prayer question, it's going to go into, that's next week's thing. Keep that question, please. Okay. Any other questions? Of course, drunkenness, intoxication breaks wudu. May Allah save us. Insanity, may Allah save us, breaks wudu. Falling unconscious breaks wudu. Okay? Unconscious, I mean like you're completely, out of consciousness, right? Yeah, it doesn't break wudu. It doesn't break your prayer at all. Okay? Sometimes the fear of doing it actually makes it come. So, yeah. Okay. As long as you're not sleeping in my khutbah, your wudu is fine. If you start snoring in my khutbah, you have to make ghusl. No, I'm just kidding. No. I mean, again, this is why it's such a mercy, right? Because you're coming from a long day, especially if, people are doing labor work or something, and you sit down cross-legged and it happens. So no, that person doesn't have to go and make their wudu again, unless they were sitting. Like, see how you're sitting? See how you're sitting? And you sit like that. Stay sitting. No. If you fall asleep like that, that breaks your wudu. Why? Because your buttocks are not firmly on the ground. How you're sitting with your hand up right there, that is not firmly on the ground. But how you're sitting, face away, how most people here are sitting cross-legged, how our sisters are sitting, that, right? Yeah, no, that's no. As long as your buttocks are up, like you have your legs are up, watch. And I'm not going to tell you, try passing gas in that situation, you can do it. Right? But if you were sitting down properly, especially when you gain a little bit of weight when you grow up like us, then you're not going to be able to. That's what it is. The whole point is this. Did you pass gas or not? Because when you're sleeping, you don't know if you pass gas. So it's assumed as soon as you sleep that you pass gas. That's true, but the problem is it's so common to break wind quietly when you're sleeping. The only person who's sleeping did not break their wudu was the Prophet. No, because you're sitting down. Or if you're not sitting down, you mean? No, you assume that you did. So even if you have a deep sleep and you're on the plane, no, you assume you stayed in that position. You don't assume I turned around like this and then I came back to this. You just assume. Yes? You're not aware. Yes. Yes. So that is one of the opinions of the scholars. That's why one of the opinions of the scholars was that only if you're sitting in a position where your muscles are actually tense, so it shows that you're not in a very deep sleep, then they said that. But this is an opinion that's generally more expansive. Because look, if you're on a subway and you came back from work, Asr and Maghrib have very little time between each other. You have wudu when you get on the subway, go train. You fell asleep on the go train. You woke up, a few minutes left for Asr. This makes a lot of sense. You don't have to go make your wudu again. Or our brother said about Jummah khutbah. I mean, that means that all the people who fell asleep, who just nodded off in the Jummah khutbah, some of them are even snoring. Some of them you hear like Z's coming out. So are we going to say go make the, it's hardship. So this is why what you're saying is a more precautious opinion. So what we're saying is a more mainstream opinion. Yeah, that's the exception. If you are praying and you fall asleep in one of the positions of prayer, your wudu does not break, as long as you're holding yourself up. So if you actually make a sujood and you can sleep in a sujood, your prayer does not break. Your wudu does not break. Why? Because your body is showing your muscles are tense enough that you're not going to relax. Once you relax, your limbs would relax, you would fall. Get it? If you fall asleep in ruku, I mean, you've got some muscular control. People can do it. Happens in Taraweeh all the time. People are sleeping. They have muscular control, right? Then you see them fall over like this. Then you know. But even that doesn't break your wudu. Even if you're sleeping in prayer during Taraweeh and you go like this, it doesn't break your wudu. So as long as you can hear something in the background, it's a very light sleep, it doesn't break. Even if you lie down in the bed, lie down completely, and you're still hearing your wife giving you instructions about what to do tomorrow, and you're just drifting out. No, just kidding. Actually, it's more opposite. I talk and she falls asleep. So even if that's happening, even if you're hearing the voices and you're just drowsy, it doesn't break your wudu. Only when you stop hearing everything, deep sleep, then that's different. Okay, let's keep going because we just have one more thing to do about the act of ghusl. The fard act of ghusl is three things. Fard ghusl. Number one, you wet your body. So get into it, take a shower. That's one. Number two, you rinse your entire mouth once. And number three, you rinse your nose up to the hard part, meaning you just fill your nostrils once. That is all you have to do for ghusl. Other scholars did not even say you have to do the nose and the mouth. They said you have to just do outer body. So in other words, ghusl is so easy. People don't realize, they think that shower and ghusl are two different things. It's not true. Every day you take a shower, if you just took some water like this to your nose, you'll be done. Even if you drank the water and you just through your nose, you'd be done. Now that's just fard. So in other words, this is very useful for when intimacy happens in the night, people wake up, they need to catch fajr right at the end. Instead of, oh man, ghusl now is going to take 10, 15 minutes. No. You jump in the shower, you can take a 2-minute ghusl quickly, you jump out. Okay, this is actually important to know. Whenever you wake up in janaba and you have to catch a prayer time, go shower, 2 minutes, done, you're out. Okay, you got your prayer. The sunnahs of ghusl are different. Sunnah of ghusl, just like wudu, you recite tasmiyah, you make an intention before you take your clothes off, you wash your hands up to the wrist, you wash the front and rear private parts, just generally put water. You can do this all in the shower. You don't have to do this in a bucket. You can do this in the shower. Any impurity on your body, you wash it off. Then you perform wudu. You can do that in the shower too on the sunnah method. Then you pour the water over the entire body 3 times. Now, obviously, does anybody here take a bucket bath? Anybody here take a bucket bath? You do? Very good. That's sunnah to do that. But if a shower, sometimes you can do it too. But if you were doing a bucket bath, then the sunnah would be you pour water over the body 3 times. There's different ways to do it. Some say head, then right, then left. Okay? So there's different ways of doing it. But the point is, if you do that, then that's fine. Or you're in the shower, as long as you're standing there for the amount of times it takes to do it 3 times. And then to rub the body once. So don't do back and forth. Just touching the body once, sunnah. So if you didn't do it in the fard, it's okay. The other thing, for example, you have earrings that you took off. You just touch your earring like this. You touch the hole. Put your finger in your belly button, like this. Okay. Any questions about ghusl before we finish? We're going to have to wrap up now because we've gone 20 minutes. Sister. Very good question. For women, what about washing your hair? There's an exception only for women. If you braid your hair before you take the ghusl, even if you just twist it up, you don't have to wash the entire hair. All you have to do is lift up the ponytail or whatever, the braid, and just wash the head part. Just wash the actual head, so the water touches the roots of the hair. And you can leave the entire hair. This is actually from the hadith of Salama, radiallahu anha. She said, "O Rasulullah, I'm a lady who has lots of big braids. And taking a ghusl back then without heat, okay, especially multiple times, it was very difficult. The Prophet ﷺ allowed women to do that. Men, however, cannot do that. Okay? Very good question. And you can do that you don't have to have the braids before the intercourse. You can even just do it right before you head into the shower, and that's fine. Okay? Okay. Other questions about ghusl before we move on and wrap up? Yes. Yes, it is generally the same, but in ghusl you have to do it to that, like the gargling point and to the high point. In the wudu, you don't have to do it right back to that point. That's the only difference. Again, you don't have to make a noise, tell everybody in the house that you're making ghusl. You can do it quietly. Okay? Exactly. If you're fasting in Ramadan, you can just do it. You just do it lightly, very lightly. Okay? Okay. And that only occurs if you wake up in janaba. You start fasting, so you can fast in janaba, and then you still have to make a ghusl after fajr. Okay. Now, we talked about the sunnah acts. When does ghusl become fard? Number one, when there is ejaculation of semen for the men, or a woman has ejaculation orgasm, then something comes out, they have to take a ghusl. If there's a wet dream, and they know for sure the wet dream happened. If there is penetration of the male into the female, even just a little bit for the head to disappear, that takes even if there was not orgasm at the end or ejaculation, ghusl becomes mandatory. And I have to say this, whether it's in the front passage or the back passage, anal sex is haram completely in Islam, but they still mention it so to let you know there is no way around that ghusl. Okay, it's still haram by consensus. Menstruation, after menstruation, or nifas, which is the bleeding that happens after childbirth, when that comes to an end, you have to take a ghusl before you start to pray. And if a person becomes a Muslim while they're in a state of janaba or major impurity, they have to take a ghusl before they pray. That's why often people say, before you become Muslim, just tell them to take a bath and come. Right? But otherwise, if the person wants to take shahada and you don't know, then you don't assume. You don't tell them go take a bath. Just give them the shahada. And in the end, when a person is deceased, it is a fard kafaya on everybody that someone has to give them a ghusl. Okay. When you are in janaba, major ritual impurity, you should not enter a masjid unless you have a need. You should not touch or recite the Quran even from memory. And you cannot have sexual intercourse during haid. Okay? However, there are different opinions about this. Some scholars say, for example, some of the Saudi Salafi scholars say you can enter a masjid. If the woman has haid, she can still enter the masjid. Sometimes you might pray in a place and call it a masjid, but it's not really a masjid. It's not a legal Shari masjid. So for example, MNN is not a legal Shari masjid, right? Faisal? Is it? Is MNN a legal Shari masjid? No, or is it a musalla? Is it more like a musalla? Because can women enter here? So it depends on the intention. If the okay, so that would mean that a woman, see, on this opinion, then a woman would not be able to enter in the masjid. So what happens is, I'm sure exactly. Yes. Mm-hmm. Right. Right. So that's what I'm asking. Right? But this is why, so on that opinion, right, then a woman in haid, but however, it doesn't mean you all have to run now if somebody has a, because they're in this area. But what it means is there is also a minority opinion that a woman in haid can enter the masjid. Okay? So a lot of places take that opinion nowadays to allow sisters to attend programs like this. Okay? But on this majority opinion, then not all of the masjid is technically a masjid. Just the front carpet is a masjid. That's something to think about. Okay. Any other questions? That is a majority opinion. From as far as I understand, that's the Hanafi opinion. As long as the woman is on haid or janaba. Yeah. If you're in haid, menstruation, or janaba, meaning post-sexual impurity, then you don't, unless it's a dua. Like if you write, say, Fatiha as a dua, Ayatul Kursi for protection, you can do that, but not like Surah Yasin, Now, there are other opinions which allow the recitation, even in menstruation, in certain circumstances. So you can look into the other minority opinions. No, you don't have to have wudu to recite Quran. Just have wudu to touch the Quran. Okay, the last topic we will not be able to cover, which is tayammum. It doesn't happen very often, but it's just if you cannot use water and you're sick, this is the most common one. If you cannot use water and you're sick, or you're outside and you don't have water to make wudu, it's not anywhere nearby, you can't buy it, or it's too cold or you're too sick, you can use a stone, or like you can use a rock surface, or a dirt surface, or even dust. And just instead of washing, put your hand on it twice. Put your hand on it. You can pray. With tayammum, if you're too sick to make wudu, because the water is going to harm you, or it's too cold, there's nothing to warm it up, or, for example, if you're outside and there's no water for like 1 mile, 2 miles around, you're driving in a place, you stopped on the side of the road, and the prayer time is about to go, you just tap so sidewalk is also like stones. You can pick up a rock and you can do it. You can do dust, but you can't do grass. You can't do wood, for example. Okay. That was a very, very quick run through of tayammum, but it doesn't happen very often. Has anyone here had to make tayammum? That's in where? In like Dubai or something? Here. Okay, yeah. So that's it. And that's the end, alhamdulillah, of our presentation, Jazakumullah khairan, for today. And tomorrow, next week, we will get to Salah. Are there any outstanding questions before we go? Yes. Yes, so someone who cannot make wudu on their own, it's nice if someone's there to help them make wudu, fine. But if they cannot do it or it's hardship, they do not have to make wudu, they can make tayammum. Just have a stone, and they just mix it in their hands with the intention, and they wipe their face, wipe their hands, they're done. Same thing goes for a pregnant woman who's so, her expectancy is so much that she cannot even make wudu on her own. Like lifting the feet, and she doesn't have anybody to help her. You don't have to get someone to help you. You can just, if you need to. All right? Any other questions finally? Oh. Yeah, so the non-water approach, is it only for face and hands or private areas as well? What parts of the body can be without water? So tayammum is replacement for wudu and ghusl. So even if you're coming, where this is very useful. Lady goes to work or school. Her period ends in the middle of the day. She can't take a bath at school. What does she do? She makes tayammum. And she prays. When she gets home, as soon as she gets home, she takes a bath. So this is actually one fatwa that's very, very useful for our sisters. They don't have to run back home. They don't have to go to their friend's house. They don't have to miss school. They can just say, look, in my work, I don't have enough water to take a bath. There's nowhere to. I make tayammum, go back to prayer. Tayammum can take the place of ghusl and wudu. Just remember that. Okay. Okay, when you said that you can make wudu on your hair in public with a hijab, is that only if you have wudu beforehand? That's a good question. That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that question because that is a minority opinion. I have not studied their opinion. But I would have to look that up. That is the opinion of Sheikh Ibn Uthaymeen, and I think one of the opinions of one of the Hanbali scholars. But that's why I don't give that as a standard opinion to wipe over the hijab. Okay? You just put your hand under. And listen, if a woman has to make wudu in public and a man sees her, the man is supposed to turn away. If she has no other place, it's not her sin. So if you are walking in a park and a woman is clearly in a corner and you see her like this and you see her hair up like this and you see her arms up like this, it's a man's job not to look. She has to worship her Lord. And this is another thing people misunderstand. They think a woman cannot pray in public because someone's going to see her back. She should obviously take the means to pray as hidden as possible. But if she has to pray there in the mall or in the park or at work, then she should not stop it just for the sake of men around her. Right? You're worshiping Allah. You're not dealing with the men. It is probably a good idea to make the class a bit shorter. I know. I'm sorry. We only have 2 sessions in which I have to cover all of purification and all of prayer. Next week, inshallah, will be all of prayer. Thank you so much for sitting through patiently. You can always message me, DM me as well if you have questions, or email. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Next, we have a program right after this. So you guys have to be on time. We'll start on time, we'll end on time. I don't want to start at 2:30 because